Please welcome to the stage Alexis Ohanian, Maya Penn, Rostam Reifschneider, and Lissie Garvin.
All right. Thank you all for coming out. We've had quite a few days here in the world, and just grateful we get to spend some time together here talking about another major existential crisis known as climate, but to focus on the things that we are doing to actively solve it, or at least battle against it. And I'm really fortunate, a year ago, almost to the day, I announced the 776 Foundation pledged $20 million over the next 10 years to back really exceptional young people for a couple of years, give them $100,000 each, give them community support, leadership, thanks to Elizabeth Garvin, and say, hey, like, what if we challenge young people to take a big swing on climate? And I've been so in awe with what the fellows have done over the last year. This is just 2 of them. The other 18 are not able to fit on the stage, but are doing great work online. But it's been amazing to watch this work over the year, and it's also been incredible to see the work that Lissie has done building this foundation. And we'll get to meet some of the fellows as well. But I think I want to hand it over to Lissie first and let you kick things off with what the 776 Foundation is all about.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Climate change is a global issue. It affects every single person in this room, in this building. And what we're doing is giving these young, bright minds the opportunity to take 2 years to just build in climate. We have someone in California who's fighting forest fires, or a fellow in Kenya who has built solar-powered refrigerated storage units for farmers. And what we're really doing is giving them this $100,000. We're telling them, don't go to college, just go build so that we can all have climate change solved. And you'll get to hear from 2 of them today, and I'm excited for you all to share the projects that you're working on.
Oh yeah, and one other thing I should stress too, this is one of the things that surprised me and delighted me the most in the last year is, so by definition, right, we're talking about Gen Z, the young people, the future, that are so incredibly motivated, and I feel like y'all's generation has seen the mistakes that previous generations have made. You realize the threat, and there's a lot of folks who are maybe more disillusioned, jaded, cynical about what can be done. And I really believe one of the best antidotes to that cynicism is not like me on stage talking about how important the issue is. It's about actual builders from that generation, like you 2, doing the work and showing that there is a path forward, and that cynicism is not going to solve this problem. It's going to take a lot of work from a lot of people. And by living those values, you're doing more than I think you realize. So Rostam, starting with you, what exactly even motivated you to apply to the fellowship, to be working on Hydrova? Share a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came across the 776 Fellowship while looking for funding sources for my company, Hydrova. I decided to apply because I knew the massive impact the funding would have on getting Hydrova started. And as I learned more and more about 776, I got so inspired by Alexis's mission to empower us, young entrepreneurs and climate activists, to spend 2 years tackling the most important challenge facing humanity today. I grew up in California, where I've witnessed the firsthand effects of climate change every day of my life, from never-ending droughts to wildfires that ravage the state every year. And I knew that I wanted to dedicate my career to fighting climate change. And when I found out about the fellowship, I definitely knew that this was a program that I wanted to be a part of.
Well, I'm glad you applied, and you're going to share a little about the work that you're doing to revolutionize the recycling of aluminum and the production of cement or concrete. I also want to introduce Maya. You started this quest for climate activism when you were 8. I knew you were young. I was 8 when you started?
Yes, that is correct.
And then when did I see your first TED Talk? How old were you?
So by the time I was 13, that's when I given 3 TED Talks, actually. So
Not
that
bad.
was TED Women, and that went like viral worldwide, and it actually has a really special connection to the project I'll be speaking about later.
Yes. Well, so you clearly had this drive at an early age, at an age when I was probably still first discovering and ensconced in like video games. You realized that you needed to do something to solve this problem. Why? How? What's the recipe here? I've got a 5-year-old. How do I align her in the same way as early?
Yeah, and also she is amazing. You're already doing an awesome job.
Thank you. She's all right. She's all right. No, she's great. She's the best.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started as a youth climate activist in 2008 when I was 8 years old. I'm 23 now, so I've been in the space for 15 years, which is hard for me to wrap my mind around. I've always really been focused on both systemic and cultural change when it comes to sustainability, environment, and of course, anthropogenic climate change, which is what we're all talking about today. I've really had a focus in sustainable fashion for a long time because the fashion industry has a huge impact on our planet. Through that work, I've become a sustainability consultant and worked in the ESG space as well. I have my own nonprofit too. But in the midst of that and all of that grassroots work and consulting work and et cetera, I'm also an artist and an animator. And in 2016, during the Obama administration, I was commissioned to animate the opening of the first ever digital report presented to U.S. Congress. And this was to get an American Museum of Women's History built in Washington. And I was 16, and I created the animation, and I went to the Capitol and everything. And, I think that for me, as someone who has spoken at schools and youth organizations and around the world, I've really been able to see and hear from so many other young people like myself and people of all ages who really what they need, the messages they need to hear in order to feel empowered to even engage in the space and the topic of climate, because it's extremely complex. And doing this work through my animation, I've seen just how powerful of a tool it can be to create real world change and impact, which is why I started my production company, Upendo Productions. And I'm really excited and honored to be a part of the 776 incredible climate fellowship, because I really haven't seen anything like it before.
And I know your mom's here. A little shout out for moms.
Yeah.
What she played a role in all this. I think it is atypical for an 8-year-old or 9-year-old to be this interested this early. So is there any one thing out there for any other parents or expecting parents to be doing?
Yeah, my mom and my dad have been, I'm extremely grateful that I have parents, like when I walk to them and I'm like, I want to start, sustainable fashion line, I want to, be an environmental activist. They were like, okay. Like, not everyone's parents would do that or say that or even be like, understand that. I think what's really crucial is to, really listen to and empower your kids whenever they're coming to you with what it is that they're passionate about, especially if it's something that can help make a positive impact on the world or their community, then really, support that and lean into that. And, I come by it honestly because, my mom, like, and her mom, my grandmother, they grew up planting organic garden, like, in their backyard and being very in tune with nature. And, she did the same for me. And then my dad, when he was a teenager, he was creating solar energy projects for science fairs and, like, getting awards from NASA. So I just had that awareness of sustainability and environmental action. I just took it and ran with it.
Right on.
So, yeah.
Well, we're all the beneficiaries of that. Now, I want to do a little show and tell. Rostam, if you could please tell us about Hydrova, what it does. We've got some fun props here. Show us.
I still can't believe you brought this through security.
Great. Y'all are getting a treat
suspicious.
here. Oh yeah, he managed to get this through TSA, which is really impressive.
A little scary.
TSA was very interested in what this was. So Hydrova helps to transform waste byproducts of aluminum manufacturing that would otherwise go to landfill into green hydrogen and valuable products that are used to make aluminum and cement. So aluminum is an extremely important material for the future of sustainability because it can be recycled in a nearly circular fashion. Aluminum recycling produces 95% less emissions than mining aluminum, and the US is very good at recycling aluminum. Over 3/4 of the aluminum that we make comes from recycling scrap. And as we see more and more single-use plastics replaced by aluminum products, like this aluminum water bottle that I purchased at the airport on the way here, we are going to need to do more and more aluminum recycling, which is why it's so important that we figure out a better way to handle the waste byproducts that come from the aluminum recycling process. So this is dross, which gets produced in massive quantities and gets scraped off of scrap melting furnaces and ultimately landfilled. Over 1 million tons of the stuff goes to landfill in the US every year, which poses an environmental challenge because the material is reactive and can create emissions and harmful and explosive gases. So Hydrova transforms dross into the raw ingredients for aluminum production and cement production, and green hydrogen. So basically
You're Vanna White. There you go.
So we turn this into aluminum, which gets used to make these, and we turn it also into cement, raw ingredients for cement, which I have an example of here, and green hydrogen, which you can't see because it's invisible. So this helps to both reduce the amount of hazardous waste that goes to landfill and also produces hydrogen, which can be used to decarbonize heavy industries like aluminum and cement. So since beginning the fellowship, we've gone on to raise our seed round of funding and are now piloting our technology with California's largest aluminum recycler.
And, oh yeah, all right, let's clap it up for that. And what's wild about this is, okay, would this have been a project you'd have done like nights and weekends while still at school? Is this like how? I'm not just trying to pat myself on the back here, but from my perspective, I think one of the things that made building this foundation feel kind of obvious is that every day in our day jobs on the venture side, we meet exceptional people of all ages who, with the right amount of focus and a little bit of capital, can do some really dope shit. Good luck signing that one. Oh, he's on it. Sorry, I gotten very unprofessional. Excuse my language. But the point is, I think for a lot of folks in the audience and even myself, I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, wait, and how old are y'all? Like, I think this should not surprise us because there are people in our society who are this hungry, who are this motivated, but it may not necessarily have those last couple of pieces that get put together, whether it's the grants or the communities, different things. But what was that deciding point specifically? Because like this is significant. I mean, this is not a sort of I don't know, weekend science project. Like there's a ton of work that goes into this.
Yeah, absolutely. So this actually got started about 3 years ago during the COVID pandemic. So I was at school at MIT on the East Coast and got sent back to California, which is where I'm from originally, due to COVID, and simultaneously got a grant from MIT to start working on this technology. And that was sort of that phase of, nights and weekends working on this side project. And then we decided to pursue it, full time and to go for it. To raise funding, and that's when I started looking for opportunities like the 776 Foundation, and it all went from there.
That's wild. And I say this explicitly too because the goal here is not to deride higher education. I feel like you got a whole other panel discussion about the pros and cons in the modern era and evolving that. It's about the fact that we clearly need solutions across all areas of our society, from the way that we produce and recycle aluminum and cement, to the stories that we're telling to generations of folks. And actually, that's a nice little segue there. So then you actually have some exclusive content here for the audience, right? Can you set up this trailer, Maya, of your latest program?
Yes. So one of to back all the way up, I've done work with Hulu, Adobe, GoDaddy, and a number of other companies creating media and content focused around social and environmental good messages and education. And now through my production company, I'm doing my own original IP, which is called Asali, Power of the Pollinators. The thing that's fun about Asali is that I mentioned the TED Women talk I gave when I was 13. This is technically a project that has been in the making for over like a decade. I originally created the idea when I was 11 years old, and I really wanted to create a new piece of media that could be like fun and engaging, but still drill into really crucial topics within sustainability, such as environmental justice, the importance of pollinators, biodiversity, biomimicry, like all of these various nerdy things that I'm not going to bore people with. But you know, when I shared just that one clip that I created when I was like 12 or 13, I got literally tons of emails. I still get people who are like, "Oh my gosh, this looks so cool. You know, I want to, show this to my students at school. Or is there a series? Is there a movie? Is there a book? Like, what can I do?" And so, I always knew this had to come to life eventually. And so, I'm excited to share like a first look teaser of, what I've been working on and me and my team have been collaborating on. Can we hear this out?
Is there sound? There is sound. All right. Let's give us that good sound, AV.
There's supposed to, where's the AV team?
Thank you. Wait.
Do you want to start it over?
Yeah. You mind?
Let's do a take two. It's out of sync right now.
The protection of the Guardians is slipping. Free us and yourselves from our exploiters. You must act.
Yay!
All right. I heard there was a good cameo in there.
Thank you. Yeah.
I feel like someone's voice in there sounded
Someone's
very
voice is
familiar.
very familiar. That is, in case you're like, is that Whoopi Goldberg or am I crazy? It is Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
We just announced the cast this morning, and really incredible people that I'm have either met in the past or collaborated with people who are also activists and advocates within the space. And this is again a story that's really close to me. It focuses on Asali, the honeybee, and she meets a gang of various colorful pollinator friends, and a human environmental scientist named Samara. And they come together to solve the mystery of this deadly force that is threatening their home and that has also been haunting Asali and her family's past, which is, there's some mystery, but it's definitely, it's full of heart, it's full of, environmental science, and it's also focused on how environmental disaster can also impact mental health and create generational trauma, and really grounding these kind of complex topics in a way that's accessible to a lot of people around the world. So I'm really excited for it.
This is wild. You all absolutely need to see the original TED video she's referencing, because you'll see the early animations, and to see the progression now and then voiced by Whoopi, it's just, it's awesome. This is also a good time for reflection. Lizzie, it's been 1 year since you took the reins to really build this foundation in the fellowship. What's been the most rewarding part? What's been the biggest surprise or surprises?
Yeah, I can't believe it's almost been a year. Almost like next month. And the fellows have been with us for 8 months, 9 months. I think the biggest thing is that Maya briefly touched on this, but there is no other program out there like this. There's not a program that reaches internationally, gives young people, I mean, they're 18 to 23 years old. That is so young. That gives them $100,000 to just build in climate. And what we're hearing, whether it's from a top-tier climate tech investor or a representative at the United Nations, but they want this program. They want this to exist. People are really excited about it. And we're about to open applications for our second cohort in 2 weeks. So if you do know anyone 18 to 23 that is building in climate, please encourage them to apply. But we'll have 40 fellows come June, and Alexis hasn't mentioned this, but he committed to 10 years of this program. So that will be 200 young people building in climate internationally.
Thanks, Lizzie. This is all, I'm just playing the long game so that as long as one or two of you, genuinely, save the planet, I mean, that's bragging rights for the rest of my life. Like my daughter, any future grandkids, I got many generations that I can brag to about this. So I'm playing the long game, making these and they're not even investments. I mean, these are 100% no strings attached. Like it's just here's money. And I think seeing the work that you've done to build this has been exciting. We actually had our first summit, the first in-person gathering of all the fellows here in Austin not too long ago. It's where Lizzie, it's where you live here. We were also greeted by a very relevant climate disaster too at the same time, right?
Yes, that was the day. I don't know if anyone in the room lives in Austin, but it was the ice storm that came in a few weeks ago. I think 5 weeks. All of the fellows had landed from all over the world, Kenya, South Africa, Europe, and they all arrived to the hotel, and the hotel loses power, the backup generator loses power. So the irony of bringing these 20 fellows to Austin, Texas, where there is no power, and they are actively working every day in the climate space to make the world better for all of us, the irony was unreal.
Well, you still pulled off a great event under duress, albeit I guess poetic may not be the right word for it, but it was a stark reminder of how important this work was. Rostam, you were here for that. How was it meeting the fellows IRL? Short of the city being temporarily, blacked out for a day, but how was that experience?
It was incredible. I met fellows from all around the world, like you said, Africa, Europe, Asia, and we're all like-minded young people who have totally dedicated ourselves to working on climate change. And we had some really amazing conversations that I am sure will last beyond the fellowship itself. The event really solidified the connection between the group.
Well, we're hoping. We still have so much work to do to foster and build that community because it can be a lonely road as a founder, especially if you don't have a co-founder. But even if you do have a co-founder, it's hard, right? Not many people wake up every morning in quite the same way, thinking about not just the existential dread of climate, but also just their own sort of businesses or organization survival as a founder. And so we're trying to find ways to build community. It's so interesting, the climate community, you all are so positive, some-minded. It is unlike any other sector that I've experienced where there's often frenemies, folks that you sort of tolerate but don't really like. Then there's outright competitors. Like I hated my rival CEO, Kevin Rose. We're now friends, it's okay. But for 6 years, I hated this guy's guts. He was the CEO of Dig, I was the CEO of Reddit, he was my arch nemesis. So we weren't even frenemies, we were just rivals. But in climate, it seems so much more positive sum, so much more enlightened, because you all realize this is a massive problem, it's also a massive opportunity. And then seeing the community that has emerged has been just fascinating for me as an outsider. And Maya, you recently were surrounded by a bunch of folks, very literally on the cover of Vogue, yes. A bunch of climate activists. Talk us through that a little bit. what does it mean that climate is entering the zeitgeist in such a way that a couple dozen of the top climate activists are on the cover?
I mean, first of all, it is like super weird. Like, whoa, people actually, this is cool now. Okay. So no, genuinely, it's so mind blowing and amazing to see how much the movement has evolved and more people have started to realize that. I think there's been a shift to focusing on people who are trying to make an impact on the world and platforming them in the same way as you would celebrities and other people, because these are the messages we need to be hearing. These are the people we need to be hearing from who have this expertise and lived experience and passion to help make an impact on the world. And yes, I was on the January cover of Vogue along with so many incredible friends in the environmental and climate space. Some I've known for years, some I just met for the first time. Alongside Billie Eilish, who has been very outspoken about climate change and also incorporating sustainable practices into her concerts. And I think that what's really crucial is to, really make sure that people that, especially activists and creators and, the people that are here on the stage who are really, boots on the ground creating these solutions, that, our voices can be heard in a really authentic way. I know that, because, as you said, climate and environment is coming into the zeitgeist, it's kind of a new experience for everyone involved, and I think it's really important for people to be able to speak their truth, to be very, again, authentic, and I think it's really important to hear and see us and not just let it just be a fleeting moment, but just in the way that 776 is genuinely supporting us and our initiatives, really figuring out how more support and resources can go to especially the Gen Z, the fellow Gen Z activists who are doing this work. And that intergenerational collaboration is extremely crucial. It's an all hands on deck situation. And I think that the solution is understanding it's not just about passing the baton, but actively, collaborating together. We need, again, it's all hands on deck. And I'm really passionate about normalizing sustainability and normalizing these topics and making that a more integrated part of our life and our society and our culture, because there was a point, especially so many of our ancestors, but sustainability wasn't a word. People just lived that way. And I think that we need to be able to get back to that and create that shift. And that's why so much of the work that I focus on is around normalizing the topics of climate, sustainability, and environmental justice.
Well, y'all are doing the work. And hopefully there's a few people here in the audience or watching who want to learn more. You should definitely go to 776.org. But Lissie, what else should people do if they want to support the foundation, if they want to become a fellow? What if they're 12 years old, or what if they're 39 years old? How can they also participate?
Yeah, of course. I know I said this earlier, but we are opening our applications in 2 weeks. So if you are 18 to 23, building in climate, it doesn't matter if you're in a lab doing research or if you want to start a nonprofit or you want to build a climate tech company, we want to hear from you. We want you to apply. And then also for the 13-year-old, I mean, you have this role model right here who started when she was 8. So young. And I think just staying with it, and for the older generation,
yes, I get it.
You and I, just learning from these young people. I meet with them every day and understanding what dross is. I didn't know what dross was until Rostam explained
it turns out
to
this
me.
is dross, and we all learned something here.
And dross comes from the outside. If anyone has an aluminum can in their hand, it's the writing, the droplets in the can. I did not know that. And so I think just being open to learning and understanding and every day implementing something new that can help the earth, I think that's honestly the most important thing for everyone right now. And to apply for the fellowship one more time.
Yes, you cannot plug it enough. And remember, you can always recommend someone who should apply if you're not eligible. And look, we're learning as we're going. Right, the foundation, this program is only 1 year old, so we're going to keep evolving and we're going to keep improving it. but we're off to an amazing start with these fellows. I am really inspired. I know this climate stuff can get very, very heavy because this is a really big deal. Give us some sauce. What makes you most hopeful about what's to come and our future and combating this major problem? Rostam, you mind going first? All right.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, while it's easy to get depressed about global warming, current events, all the bad things that are happening, I get really excited about technology and innovation and the power that we have in our hands today to make change. Like right now, we have the most weapons in our arsenal to fight climate change than we ever have before. We're only going to continue to develop more and more. So while the existential threat is at the highest it's ever been, we also have the highest chance of being able to solve it. And that gets me really excited about this. And I couldn't be more excited to work on it and want to encourage more people to do the same, young people especially, and of course to apply it to the next cohort.
Thank you.
I did not ask him to say that.
Maya, how about you?
I mean, what gives me hope is, well, all the people on stage right now, and, you know, everyone in the room is also attending and, you know, interested and excited. I think I've really learned as, you know, someone who's, well, I'm born and raised in Georgia, which is, you know, the heart of so many activist movements, including civil rights, among others. And I've really always found that hope is a tool for resilience. It's a fuel for action, and it's not something that's, you know, childish or irrelevant. You know, hope and joy and incorporating that into these extremely terrifying, oftentimes, you know, movements and the issues that we're trying to tackle and solve, I think is extremely crucial because everyone responds differently. A lot of people see, you know, where our planet is headed, the environmental injustices around the world, the biodiversity loss, the warming of our planet, and you know, people immediately just shut down. They feel like, well, what can we do? They throw in the towel. They're like, well, you know, and especially that as people call it, kind of doomerism, that is very dangerous, I think, and it stagnates us from moving forward. And so I've always understood I've seen it in my work and the people I've mentored and the, you know, where I've spoken and I've traveled, I've seen how much, and even consulted, I've seen how much that hope has really been a crucial role in action and in solutions and moving forward and staying motivated. And especially, of course, that's why I'm using oftentimes the arts and focusing on community building and job creation and things that, you know, can reinvigorate us and rejuvenate us, because it can be scary, it can be exhausting, but again, everyone that I'm so grateful and blessed to collaborate with every day, like the people that are on this stage, that's what keeps me hopeful, and I'm going to keep that going.
I love that. And what is so compelling about this is, and a very deliberate way that we designed the fellowship, we're at a point where clearly words they're not getting the job done, and what makes me so happy is to see a generation of young people doing the work. Like in tech, we always say shipping, but more broadly, shipping, whatever it is, whether it is content, whether it is improved recycling techniques, like do not underestimate the power of just getting shit done, of shipping, of accomplishing, of even the smallest little step of executing on an idea. We are so past the time of just talking about shit, and I just love the fact that we have a group of young people, and so many more who applied that just unfortunately didn't make the cut, who are just actively working to solve problems. The impact that has speaks so loudly to inspire and to give people hope, and I think people are hungry for it. And before I ask you, Lizzie, I failed my duties as moderator. If you have questions, we're going to open this up to Q&A. There's an app, I don't know if it's the Slido, no, it's powered by Slido. Join via the South by Southwest Go app by clicking Engage on the event page. And then you can ask questions, and those questions will be surfaced here. Looks very similar to Reddit. You can upvote the ones that you like, and then we'll ask them. Okay, Lizzie, give us some of the goods. What inspires you? What motivates you right now?
Yeah, well, I feel like I should mention, so when we launched the fellowship a year ago, we had 650 young people from around the world, and that was without we launched the foundation and the fellowship the same day, so we were like, okay, we'll just
There you go.
try this experiment real quick.
There's like one article. No one wanted to cover it. All the press were like, no,
Yeah, all
pass.
the press said
Hard
no.
pass. Not interesting.
But the fact that 650 young people from around the world applied, like, that is amazing. And then you just got to hear from Maya and Rostam, and I see Valkyrie, one of our other fellows in the front row here. She's speaking later today at 4 p.m.
Oh,
The fact that I get to spend every day learning from these people, and they wake up every morning with the plan to fight climate change, I truthfully can't believe that I even get to call this a job. Like, it's such a gift that this is a job, so thank you for that.
Sure.
But I think just, these young people, like, they really are going to be the future, and they are going to make it a better planet for every single person in this room, and I think that is why I'm so optimistic. So thank you for you three.
You're living it. Yeah, we can clap. We should clap it up for that. Absolutely. And I wanna stress too, as we're taking these questions, I don't know if we're allowed to take. Well, folks, are we live streaming this? As I look to the AV queue, no, we are not. So I can't say, hey, if you're online, you should like it. Anyway, if you're watching this later, let's say you're in the future and you're watching this video later on YouTube, you should still tag the foundation on Twitter if you have follow-up questions, if you want introductions to any of the fellows. This is going to live on in the internet forever, everyone. So more questions to come. But, all right, let's go right to the questions to the audience. I've got one here that is a great one. Genevieve, you're in there early, and you got an upvote for your question, so I'm asking it first. For the two fellows, when was the first moment, like I'm talking the exact moment, that you realized you wanted to devote your time and energy to combating climate change? Let's go first. Rostam, go ahead.
I can go first. So, like I mentioned, I grew up in California and had witnessed droughts and wildfires my whole life. But the first moment when I realized that was really what I wanted to commit my career to, I was actually on a school field trip. I was fortunate enough to go to school that was able to take me to a field trip to JPL at Caltech. It was a really, really awesome experience.
Jet Propulsion Lab at Caltech,
which is run by NASA, and NASA has a program called Eyes on the Earth that collects all the data from all of their satellites that they've had orbiting the Earth for the past 20 plus years. And they have this really incredible display at JPL, which is like a digital sort of globe that's a screen, a spherical sort of screen that displays the data. And looking at that data, see global temperature and various other things that they're tracking just sort of dramatically skyrocket and change over the past 20 years. The whole globe got engulfed in red rather than blue, which is what it was in the 1990s when they started collecting the data. And seeing that visual representation of NASA's data, which is pretty irrefutable, I was like, wow, this, how is this real? How is this the case? How is this happening? And we're not all, freaking out and working on it. So that was when I knew that was what I wanted to work on.
Man, and the fact that you disregarded all of the great evidence out there for the flat Earth beliefs is just, how could you look past that? No, in all seriousness, though, this is the fact that the data is there, and I can only imagine presented that way is just so visceral a feeling that we don't really get sitting here, just oblivious here on the spherical planet Earth. That's a beautiful thing. We should put that on a billboard or start setting up displays somewhere or something, because if we can scale even that impulse of oh shit, I think we're making progress. You touched on this a little, Maya, but I really want to know the exact moment you just were like, this needs to be my life's work.
It's funny because I don't think I have like an exact moment. Like as long as I have remembered, I've always been like an extremely nerdy like kid, like always talking about environmental science and like endangered species of animals or whatever, and annoying like my friends and family with that. And I think that for me, you know, there's kind of a lot of different layers. Of course, I completely understand you, Rostam, because also being in Georgia, seeing the tornado seasons get worse and worse, and each summer is the hottest summer on record. It's like, that's not normal. But then on top of that, I think I've always really had a passion for the underserved issues within environment and climate that I feel are huge pieces of the puzzle, but just need to be brought to the surface more. So, starting in sustainable fashion in 2008, no one was talking about that on a larger scale, at least. And that was really important to me, talking about environmental justice, talking about, pollinators and all these different things that where, again, there wasn't really a major platform or anything where there was more information about these topics, and I wanted to create more education around them. I think that's something that's always really driven me for sure. But also too, I think that moment, the thing that I really know for sure is I really had to kind of build my own blueprint of what it meant to be a youth environmental activist, because this was also before like the climate strikes and everything like that. Like I really had to, kind of pull from, as I mentioned, leaders like in civil rights that I've even had, the huge, immense honor I stand on their shoulders of meeting and learning from, like the, late, great John Lewis, and even, Dr. Bernice King, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s daughter, and I've met and learned from her, so much over the years. So it's almost like the thing that I do know, and I want all people to realize, is that environmental issues are also human rights issues, and there's not that much separation between many of the various social and world issues that we experience in our communities around the world every day, and climate. Like climate is the all-encompassing, right? Like it's kind of the multiplier of everything, and it kind of multiplies, every other issue that we're experiencing throughout the world. And so it was really kind of just an organic understanding, and then figuring out how I specifically as Maya wanted to channel that through all of my various kind of mediums and passions and methods.
I love that. Well, it's a credit to your parents, both of whom are here. I only saw Mom backstage, but hi, Mom and Dad. It's so wild, and I love hearing you say that. I think, and I hope that there are going to be more kids that have it framed in that way, because it'll be such a given. And I'll share one anecdote. It's funny. I have a megalodon tooth on my desk, and I got my daughter excited about megalodons as a result, because there's this giant megalodon tooth. And if you haven't seen the amazing documentary Meg, starring Jason Statham, you should see it. It's not a documentary, but there was a giant shark that lived way before. It was like prehistoric type thing a minute ago, and I have this tooth as a reminder that like this massive apex predator of the ocean eventually went extinct. We have different reasons why, speculated, but it's a humbling thing to see this big ass tooth and know that there's no more. But by doing that, my daughter learned what extinction was. And so she's like, so there's no more megalodons? I'm like, yeah, don't worry, you don't have to. She was a little nervous about going in the ocean because of megalodons, which, reasonable problems to have, I guess. And I could assure her, no, they're extinct. But by understanding the concept of extinction, then it led to conversations about animals that we have made extinct. And explaining that to a 5.5-year-old is such an illuminating experience, because in her mind, these things exist. They live their lives. They may not, thankfully, live near us in some cases, but they exist on this planet in the same way, with the same sort of basic right to existence that we do. And to hear that we made them extinct is a really sad thing for a 5.5-year-old, at least mine. She was very disappointed to learn about all the animal species we've wiped out. And just to have to take that little bit of accountability for it, and understand that her generation is going to have this much more front and center in the way that they grow up. It makes me hopeful that we'll get a lot more Mayas and Rostams. And I do believe, and this is one question that's popped up a ton. This will be a good one for you, Lissie. I want to stress too, right? As Lissie mentioned, we have applicants that are for-profit founders, that are nonprofit founders, that are just young people with a dope idea that can have an outsized impact. We take all fellows from all kinds of backgrounds. But how does the fellowship provide guidance in leadership and entrepreneurship to the participants? This is from Shant.
Yeah, so like I've mentioned, it is only not even a year old. We're not a year old yet. And I tell the fellows this all the time, how grateful I am to them for even joining the fellowship, because they didn't know what they were signing up for. Yes, of course, it was Alexis Ohanian, the greatest investor, so there was that perk, but they didn't know what the fellowship was going to entail. So I think what we've been doing a lot is this constant feedback loop where they're telling me how I can improve. And on top of that, we offer, we have Cerebro, which is our internal software that runs the fund, but the fellows also have access to. And it gives them an opportunity to post in Cerebro. There's this thing called Agora, and they can recommend other fellowships, other grants, and it's also a way for them to constantly have connection with Alexis and I. And on top of that, we bring in speaker series. We do a speaker series every month, whether it's someone running a venture fund, or we had Melanie Nakagawa from the White House come talk to the fellows. So there's just this constant learning. We do one-on-ones. We meet as a group every month. Like Alexis mentioned, we brought everyone together a few weeks ago. So I think it's been really good. But like I said, first year, so gonna continue to improve. And the fellows are with us for 2 years, so they will get the second year improvement.
And this question from Sebastian is an appropriate one, and I actually didn't even know eco-anxiety was a thing, so I learned. The question is taking action and being an activist a way for you to combat eco-anxiety? And real quick, Lissie, as I remember the first time I brought this up with you, because you were bringing this up, that it was such a common issue among this generation, as you were hearing, especially among climate fellows. Quick sort of definition of terms, and then I want to hear it from these folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, I do these one-on-ones with the fellows, and this actually gets brought up a lot. It's this anxiety that the younger generation feels. They wake up and they feel a lot of pressure to improve the planet, and also like what is going to happen to my future. So it's a thing that we talk about a lot, because I want them to feel supported, and I want them to know that this work that they're doing will pay off. But yeah, I would love to hear from Maya. You can go first on how you handle it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it's funny. I think that I'm really glad to see that it's even like the American Psychological Association and so many people starting to now recognize that this is an actual thing that so many people deal with, this fear of climate and environmental doom. And there's definitely a lot of fear, of anxiety, of even grieving, that not just Generation Z, but people of all ages and generations and backgrounds go through, whether you've been directly impacted by extreme weather, or you're just worried about your future or the next generation, or, the thing is, climate touches everything, like literally everything that you can imagine. And taking action definitely, I think, is a huge, huge help when it comes to that, because you feel less powerless. You're actually doing something to help make an impact, to help, even just on a community level. Every change and every action is so crucial, and we need change from the top and from the bottom. So I think that what's really interesting, I think for me, and also eco-anxiety and how much me and my friends and peers deal with it, is also a driver for why I created Asali as well. And I think that what's really crucial to recognize, again, is the human impact of this crisis that we're experiencing, even from a mental health standpoint, and how that can impact us even in very subtle ways. And it's so amazing to me how interconnectivity and recognizing the interconnectivity that we all have is one of the biggest solutions to environment and climate, for sure. Like, I mean, and you know, Alexis was just talking about the animals that, you know, humans have wiped out, and I know sometimes people hear that and think, you know, that's bad for those animals, but okay, you have to understand so many of these creatures and plants and ecosystems and biomes around the world. It's like, for example, bees. If we lose bees and pollinators, we're screwed. Like let's just be completely honest. I think it's important to tap into the interconnectivity with each other and with our planet, with the natural world, because, and that's not just something that's just, oh, hippie or whatever, like that's a solution, you know, that's an opportunity. And I think it's, again, it's also a solution to eco-anxiety, to be in community with each other as well, and to be able to be candid about those feelings.
Yeah, I think, Alexis, we talked about this briefly, but I do see a world in which companies start to offer that as like a benefit to their employees to help them with this. But Rostam, I'd love to hear from you as well.
For me personally, I think my eco-anxiety comes from not being able to work on everything all at once and just being able to work on one thing at a time. There's a lot more challenges beyond aluminum recycling that we're going to need to solve, and a lot more beyond, you know, developing new technologies. There's a lot of policy changes, sort of just social, cultural shifts that we're going to have to adopt to be able to be successful in the fight against climate change. So yeah, my anxiety comes from not being able to work on everything all at once, but I have to trust that there's a lot of other amazing people out there tackling the other areas, like Maya, like the other 20 fellows, 19, and yeah, just trust that we're all sort of working on this together towards a common goal.
Well, and as you think about working towards that goal, we have a question from a wonderfully named audience member, Alexis. Since you're all tackling a big challenge that's often hard to see, how do you all measure success daily, and what incremental shifts are you looking for? Who wants to go first? I feel like every one of you has an answer for this, so Rostam?
I guess it goes back to what you said earlier about, you know, shipping, about being focused on just accomplishing and making this happen. We are just measuring our success by our you know, ability to get this technology out to the industry, scale it up, you know, go from the lab scale to pilot scale. Next step is to go to full scale, and sort of see a shift in the way that the industry thinks about how we deal with waste, and see that sort of change progress from yeah, our work. That's definitely what our goal is.
I'll talk from very quickly from both just a, you know, societal and from a private sector standpoint. Societally, I want to really recognize and bring to the forefront more around environmental and climate justice, and how we can continue to, you know, not only understand, especially Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities around the world, but, you know, so many marginalized communities are, of course, the most adversely impacted by environmental issues, but also have so many of the solutions and of the tools and the traditional ecological knowledge and the technology to that, and they just need resources to be able to support and scale that. And so I want to see more, you know, supporting of those amazing ideas and communities. And then just from a corporate or a private sector standpoint, I really want companies to focus more on collaborating with each other, you know, open sourcing their solutions, focusing on stuff like industrial symbiosis, and like I think that there's this race to be the most, you know, cater to this green market and do this and that, and it's like, you know, again, this isn't a niche, this isn't a trend, this isn't a fad, this is the future of both business and nonprofit, and I think it's really important for, to understand that we will go farther together, and this isn't just like a marketing opportunity, this is an opportunity to really reshape the industry and create a greener and more equitable future. So I know that was super random, but those are the two things that came to mind.
Right on. I want to ask you, Lizzie, I also forgot something which you reminded me of, Maya. Like, the focus of the foundation was not explicitly climate. The focus of the foundation was combating global inequity, like the biggest challenge possible, because I just wanted to keep having excuses to give money away. And when we looked at it from first principles, the realization was, well, climate is the greatest existential threat. If we don't fix that, nothing else really matters. And to Maya's point, it disproportionately affects marginalized communities. So it actually is the most important thing that we could work toward first. Could there be other types of fellows and fellowships down the line? Maybe. But for now, it also doesn't hurt that Lizzie was already very, let's say, borderline obsessed with the sector. But Lizzie, how do you track and measure progress in the foundation?
Yeah, you know, I think what I've realized from switching over to the foundation side is that this movement is very collaborative. However, there are very few people in this space. And I think making it kind of like what Maya was touching on, but bringing in more people and understanding that this is not going away. It's not a fad. Like, this is the future, and we need more and more people consciously thinking about it in their everyday life. And just, yeah, bringing on more and more fellows who are working on this.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, related to that, Alicia has a question here. What do you tell college entrepreneurs who might be nervous about the idea of dropping out of school to pursue their idea? I'll give you my hot take, which is there's almost no downside, because if you're worried about your resume, showing a future employer or investor or dean that you spent 2 years taking a big swing to solve a big problem in a meaningful way, as long as you fail in the right way, that is, you don't, like, you know, do something illegal, unethical, you know, disastrous, your failure actually looks like a success in the eyes of all those people. And so I think it's, yes, certainly if you have other financial needs, if you've got dependents, if you've got folks you're taking care of, you're weighing a lot more. It's a different calculus for everyone. But I do think it's something that, just practically speaking, I say it as an employer now. I mean, do we even ask for universities? I don't think in every, whether it was Reddit or 776, I don't even think it's an explicit part of the application. I don't even think it comes up. And again, this is not so we clearly took inspiration from things like Teal Fellows, from some of the other fellowships out there, but without the same maybe level of aggression towards higher ed. But to Lizzie's point, an expectation that I hope we're open sourcing as much of this as we can. I hope there's more competition. I hope there's other fellowships that do even better work that we can learn from, that we're always getting inspired by. Like, we don't have all the answers, but there needs to be a bunch of people competing to do better and better to support the very people who are doing the actual work. And is there something, I don't know, if you were advising a friend of yours, what advice would you give them about dropping out or taking that risk?
I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. I think now is the time. I mean, 18 to 23, you, like you said, you know, you don't have as many obligations as you might have when you're older. You don't have a family to support, and you just have less, you know, holding you down, so you can do more risky things. It might seem risky, but like you said, having that experience is actually going to be, you know, potentially more beneficial to your resume than the college degree would have been in the first place. So yeah, I'd say, like, it's definitely the best time to do something like this.
Right on. Maya?
I think that it's 1,000% worth it to take the leap, because, you know, this really is a once in a lifetime or once in a generation, you know, opportunity to be a part of something that is extremely, you know, of course, is focused on working with and collaborating with the next generation of leaders and of change makers, but also focused on really 360 support and not just helping you the time that you're a part of it, but really strategizing on how you can continue to be supported and grow your initiative beyond 776. I mean, again, like, I haven't seen anything like it, and we need you. Like, and whoever, like, if you're like, what, me? I have this idea to, you know, revolutionize, you know, it could be some fashion, or it could be the food systems, or it could be anything. But like, I don't know, like, do it. Just don't ask. Like, you have to jump for it. I started at such a young age. I did not have that mental filter of like, is it like, I didn't have all those doubts, you know, in my mind. I was like, I'm just gonna try and just see what happens. And I'm learning from my younger self, like, all the time, even though I'm, you know, still young now. Like, I learn from my 8-year-old self every day, and her courage. And I'm really glad that she took that jump to, you know, start this journey. So you should start yours too.
Well, the clock is telling me we're out of time. There's one more question I have to ask, which is really just a plug for these fellows. Marco asked, how do we make these great, inspiring young geniuses, those are Marco's words, I'm not arguing with it though, the most followed people on social media? The answer, Marco, a reality TV show. That's the way. No, I mean, Rostam's not even on IG. I was trying to tag him on Instagram backstage, and he's like, I don't have time for that nonsense. And I was like, okay, I get it. You're saving the planet. I'm kidding. He didn't say that. But the part of the challenge here, the irony is, right, and Maya does have a social presence. You should follow her, BT Dub. But, like, the challenge here, and I know I'm, like, part of this foundation is in a way me also carrying the sort of bearing the cross or sort of making up for the sins of my previous life, which is creating Reddit. Social media has, by design, really incentivized the most extreme behavior because it rewards you with you know, it rewards you, your monkey brain with a pellet, a treat for that heart or that retweet or that photo, that like. And it turns out that the content that tends to do the best tends to be the kind that evokes the most emotion, whether it's the furthest on your side or the furthest on the other side of whatever you believe. And unfortunately, the people who are head down, solving problems, speaking rationally and soberly, tend to not trend because they aren't stimulating that response that make people go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, or I hate this, I hate this, I hate this. And so I think this is something we're going to have to navigate as a society as we figure out our own kind of cultural immune system for this stuff to get better about it. I think this generation is much smarter about it than, let's say, others. But we still have to work through it. And I mean, you all can do your part. Please spread the word about what these fellows are doing. Obviously, talk about the foundation. But just know that this work is getting done. And chances are the very people who are going to have the biggest outsized impact are among the least platformed, are among the least supported. That's why it was such a big deal that you know, being on the front page of Vogue, creating those opportunities in those spaces. You got to give flowers where they're due because these are voices that tend to be ignored because they're just too busy getting the work done. And you know, so even in your own capacities, find ways to platform the folks who are doing the work, because that will make all the difference. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to the fellows. Thank you to Lissie. This was amazing. So spread the word. Tell your friends to apply. Thank you so much.